You know, it's funny, when you buy a cup of coffee with your card, there's this really wonderful illusion of instantaneous magic.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, you tap the plastic or your phone, the little machine beeps, and bam, you get your caffeine.
Yeah, and you don't even think twice about it.
Exactly. It genuinely feels to you like the money just, I don't know, physically teleported straight from your pocket right into the barista's cash register.
Like a digital handoff.
Yeah, exactly. But then if you actually look under the hood of global finance, that illusion just completely shatters.
Oh, it falls apart instantly.
It really does.
Right.
Because it is not a teleportation machine at all. Behind the scenes, it's this remarkably slow, incredibly fragmented series of whispers.
Yeah, it's a carefully maintained illusion of movement, when in reality, it's just this complex, heavily guarded web of basically IOUs.
Right.
The actual transfer of value, the real money,
Yeah.
is crawling through a maze of just totally outdated infrastructure.
And tearing down that illusion is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
It's a big mission.
It is, yeah. We are looking at a single, incredibly dense excerpt today from a paper titled Dismantling Institutional Silos, the XRP Settlement Revolution.
A very bold title.
Right. And the goal for you listening today is to explore a proposed absolute revolution in global finance.
We're really getting into the weeds of how this works.
We are. We're dissecting how you take a system built on these old, sluggish, fractured whispers we mentioned and replace it with actual, verifiable teleportation of value.
And just to establish the ground rules for our deep dive today, because we are unpacking some pretty serious financial and technological mechanics here.
Yeah, we don't want to get lost in the jargon.
Exactly. The text focuses on bridging legacy banking with decentralized liquidity. And we're going to translate exactly how that bridge operates conceptually.
Right.
Ensuring you walk away with a crystal clear understanding of what might just be, the most significant financial paradigm shift of our lifetime.
Yeah, strictly through the lens of this one text.
Regatta.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really grasp this proposed revolution, we have to start by, well, defining the battlefield.
Good place to start.
Right. The text explicitly talks about bridging a gap between two entirely different worlds.
Two totally alien worlds, really.
Yeah. On one side, we have what they call legacy banking, and on the other, we have decentralized liquidity.
And what's really fascinating here is the sheer architectural contrast between those two environments.
They're nothing alike.
No, not at all. I mean, legacy banking is essentially the system we've inherited over the last few centuries.
Built on paper, originally.
Right. And the text describes it as being built on institutional silos.
Silos.
Yeah, and if you think about it, by definition, a silo is designed to keep everything inside it contained.
Safe from the elements.
Exactly. Contained, separate, and heavily protected from the outside world.
Right.
So these financial institutions, they operate as completely isolated ledgers.
Meaning they don't natively talk to each other?
Exactly. Bank A has its book of records, Bank B has its book of records, and there is no native underlying language connecting them at all.
So I picture legacy banking like a landscape dotted with these massive, isolated, walled fortresses.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Yeah, and each fortress is a financial institution hoarding its own resources inside these incredibly thick walls.
Right, protecting the vault.
And because they're totally isolated, when they need to do business with another fortress, say, across the continent, they can't just physically hand over the gold.
They can't. It's too far. Too risky.
So what do?
Well, they rely on what the text literally calls antiquated messaging systems.
Antiquated messaging.
Yeah. Instead of moving actual value, they're basically sending telegraphs to one another.
Telegraphs.
Conceptually, yeah. They're sending a message saying, hey, deduct 10 gold coins from your vault, and I promise, I swear, I will deduct 10 from mine.
Wow.
It is purely messaging. There's no instant physical settlement happening.
But wait, if it's just a message like an IOU sent via telegraph, what happens if the fortress on the receiving end just, doesn't trust the promise?
And that right there, that is the exact friction point that defines legacy banking.
Because they can't see inside the other fortress.
Exactly. Because they cannot verify the physical existence of the gold in the other fortress instantly, they have to rely on this massive chain of trust.
And delayed reconciliation.
Right. And to make those antiquated messages actually work without constant defaults, these silos are forced into massive, massive capital inefficiency.
What does that mean, practically?
It means they have to pre-fund accounts in each other's fortresses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they literally leave piles of their own money sitting idle in someone else's silo.
Just acting as like a massive trust buffer.
Exactly, just in case the messaging system fails or a counterparty defaults. It's a system heavily taped together by trapped capital.
Which perfectly contrasts with the other side of the bridge the text mentions, right? Decentralized liquidity.
The exact opposite of a silo.
Right. If legacy banking is this landscape of walled fortresses, trapping capital to back up antiquated messages, decentralized liquidity sounds like a vast open ocean.
An open ocean is the perfect analogy.
Yeah, where the value just flows freely everywhere without needing permission from some gatekeeper.
Right,
And without needing those idle piles of trust buffers.
because the ocean is verifiable by everyone in it.
But wait, if we connect this to the bigger picture, why did these fortresses build the walls in the first place?
Well, historically, the technology to safely, instantly, and verifiably connect those disparate ledgers simply did not exist.
The ocean didn't exist yet.
Right. The space between the fortresses was chaotic. It lacked a unifying protocol.
So you needed the silos for security.
Exactly. The antiquated messaging systems, as slow and capital-intensive as they are, were really the only safe way for fortresses to speak.
Without lowering their drawbridges entirely and risking their internal ledgers.
Exactly. You couldn't risk the vault.
But wait, if I'm a massive legacy institution today, why would I ever subject my fortress to a process that tears down those walls?
That's the billion-dollar question.
Right. Aren't these gatekeepers highly incentivized to keep their silos closed so they can charge tolls on those antiquated messages?
They absolutely are.
So why hook up to the decentralized ocean at all?
Well, this raises a really important point about inevitable pressure. The incentive to tear down the walls comes directly from the sheer cost of maintaining them.
The trapped capital we talked about.
Yes, exactly. Those idle trust buffers. In a purely siloed world, billions, maybe even trillions of dollars are sitting completely uselessly.
Just to grease the wheels of an antiquated messaging system.
Right. If a technological bridge allows an institution to flush that trapped capital out into an open ocean where it can actually be used, the economic advantage is just too massive to ignore.
Ah, so it's a competitive thing.
Completely. The silo that refuses to connect to the open ocean will simply be outcompeted by the ones that do.
Because the connected fortresses suddenly have access to infinite fluid liquidity, and their capital isn't trapped anymore.
Exactly. They become vastly more efficient.
And that requires actual physical or, I guess, technological plumbing.
Right. You need pipes.
Yeah, you can't just tell two stubborn, isolated fortresses to start trading overnight.
No, they don't speak the same language.
Right. And the text states that they're bridging this gap, quote, by stress testing how new cross-chain protocols dismantle institutional silos.
A very specific phrase.
Yeah. How do these protocols actually pipe these incompatible worlds together?
Well, the text introduces cross-chain protocols and interoperability upgrades as the specific wrecking balls here.
The wrecking balls for the silos.
Exactly. A cross-chain protocol is essentially the technological translation layer.
Okay.
If you have one secure ledger in a silo and a completely different ledger out in the open ocean, they do not natively compute the same cryptography.
They're speaking totally different math.
Right. So a cross-chain protocol is the mathematical bridge that allows data and value to actually be recognized by both sides.
And the interoperability upgrades.
Those are the complex software modifications being made to ensure these previously stubborn, incompatible fortresses can finally plug their internal ledgers securely into that protocol.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because the authors explicitly use the phrase stress testing.
Yes, they do.
They are stress testing how new cross-chain protocols dismantle institutional silos. Now, stress testing a software update on your phone is one thing,
Sure.
but stress testing the demolition of a global financial fortress,
It's a slightly bigger deal.
right, that implies a massive level of friction and potential volatility. It sounds like merging these two worlds is not some guaranteed, smooth, frictionless software patch.
No, not at all. Stress testing is the text's acknowledgement of monumental risk.
A monumental risk.
Yes. You only stress test things that are going to bear an unprecedented amount of weight.
Like a suspension bridge.
Exactly. And here we are talking about connecting the astronomical value housed in legacy,
Yeah.
siloed banking, directly to decentralized liquidity networks.
Oh, trillions of dollars.
Trillions. When you introduce interoperability upgrades that allow the floodgates of a fortress to open into the ocean, the cryptographic pressure on those cross-chain protocols is going to be immense.
Because if the protocol fails under that pressure, if that translation layer glitches in the middle of a transfer, you don't just get a bounced email.
No, you don't.
What actually happens in a failed stress test here?
Well, if the interoperability fails mid-transaction, you risk systemic limbo.
Systemic limbo. That sounds terrifying.
It is. Value could be deducted from the legacy silo, sent across the cross-chain protocol, and then fail to materialize in the decentralized ledger.
So it just vanishes?
Conceptually, yeah. You could get millions of dollars stranded in a digital void.
Oh, wow.
So, the stress testing mentioned in the text is an absolute necessity. They're literally testing the cryptographic pipes with massive simulated loads before they turn on the world's biggest financial fire hose.
Because the infrastructure has to be flawless before the walls can truly come down.
Exactly. The math has to be perfect.
So assuming the pipes hold, assuming the interoperability upgrades actually survive this stress testing.
Which is the goal.
Right. Then we have to look at what is actually flowing through those pipes, because the text shifts its focus here from the bridges themselves to the specific asset crossing them.
Yes, it zeroes in on XRP.
Yeah, and it makes a massive claim about how the fundamental identity of this asset is evolving.
It really does. The text states they are analyzing if these interoperability upgrades, quote, transform XRP from a mere bridge asset into the primary settlement layer for global finance.
That is a huge statement.
It's the conceptual crux of the entire excerpt, honestly.
Let's really dig into the mechanisms behind those two terms then, because the contrast between them is stark.
It is.
A mere bridge asset versus a primary settlement layer.
Right.
Keeping with our analogy, if I'm traveling between two fortresses that don't speak the same language, I might hire a temporary translator.
Makes sense.
The translator is the bridge. I speak my language to the translator, they convert it and speak to the other person.
Okay.
The translator is incredibly useful, obviously, but they're a temporary, volatile means to an end. Once the conversation is over, the translator leaves.
That's a great way to frame it. And if you extend that translator analogy to finance, a bridge asset is something you swap your currency into, send across the gap, and then immediately swap out of on the other side.
You're just using it to cross the gap.
Exactly. You are in and out. You hold it just long enough to cross the distance. It is purely a utility vehicle.
But a primary settlement layer, is the text suggesting that moving from a bridge asset to a primary settlement layer is like firing the temporary translator because you've gotten the entire world to natively adopt and speak the exact same underlying language?
Yes, exactly. A settlement layer is the bedrock reality.
It's not the vehicle.
No, it's not the vehicle. It is the destination itself. It is the foundational ledger where the absolute truth of who owns what is finalized permanently.
So if XRP evolves from a bridge asset into the primary settlement layer,
It means the isolated fortresses are no longer just using it to ferry value back and forth between their disparate ledgers.
they're actually anchoring their transactions directly onto it.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the concept of trust?
Trust.
Yeah, because we talked earlier about how legacy banking relies on those trust buffers, the trapped capital, because they are just sending antiquated telegraphs.
Right.
How does a primary settlement layer mathematically remove that friction?
Well, it fundamentally changes the sequence of a transaction.
Okay, how so?
In the antiquated messaging system, the transaction and the settlement are two totally different events separated by time.
Right, the message and the actual movement.
Yeah. You send the message, that's the transaction, and then days later, the accounts are actually reconciled. That's the settlement.
And during that delay,
During that delay, you have massive counterparty risk. You have to trust that the other side is actually good for it.
hence the pre-funded capital.
Exactly. But a primary settlement layer forces simultaneous transaction and settlement.
Meaning the moment the message is sent, the value is already there.
Precisely. The text spells out the ultimate prize of achieving this status. It says, effectively replacing antiquated messaging systems with instant, verifiable value transfer.
Instant, verifiable value transfer.
Yes. Cryptographic finality completely replaces human trust.
Wow.
If the mathematical protocol does not verify that the funds exist on both sides simultaneously, the transaction instantly fails.
So there are no pending states.
None.
Yeah.
There are no pending states. There are no IOUs.
It is the difference between mailing a letter promising you will send a gold bar tomorrow and instantly, verifiably teleporting the actual gold bar right into someone's hand today.
That's exactly it. And a verifiable part is the absolute game changer here.
Because in the antiquated system, you just have to trust the gatekeeper.
Right. On a verifiable primary settlement layer, the math proves the value is there, And the transfer is absolute the millisecond it executes.
And this brings us to the ultimate consequence of the text, really.
Which is?
If you have instant, verifiable value transfer natively operating on a primary settlement layer, the very concept of an institutional silo becomes mathematically obsolete.
It does.
You no longer need the thick, expensive walls of the legacy fortress to protect your ledger from the chaotic unknown, because the decentralized protocol itself provides all the security, the verification, and the liquidity.
Which means all that trapped capital, all those billions in trust buffers,
And finally be released into the open ocean to actually be utilized.
yes, it is a staggering leap in global efficiency.
It really is. The text is outlining the exact mechanics of how a highly fractured, paranoid financial system transitions into a unified, mathematically transparent state.
It's a complete architectural rewrite.
Well, this has been an incredibly dense, rewarding journey today.
Absolutely.
To summarize for you, the listener, the sheer scale of the conceptual shift we have unpacked here. We started by analyzing a deeply fractured financial reality.
The world of silos.
Right. A landscape dominated by legacy banking, characterized by isolated, heavily guarded institutional silos that are forced to trap capital just to support slow, antiquated messaging systems.
Systems that trade in promises of value rather than value itself.
Exactly. Then we looked at the technological wrecking balls. We explored how new cross-chain protocols act as the translation layers.
And why those interoperability upgrades must be rigorously stress-tested.
Right, because a failure in piping decentralized liquidity into a legacy fortress could result in that systemic catastrophic limbo we talked about.
The digital void.
The digital void. And finally, we examined the boldest claim in the text, that this specific technological evolution could transform XRP from being just a temporary, fleeting bridge asset
A mere translator.
into the permanent primary settlement layer of global finance. A universal native language that doesn't just send messages, but executes instant, verifiable value transfer through cryptographic finality.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture for you, understanding this text means recognizing a massive historical pivot point.
A true paradigm shift.
Really, it is. We are observing the blueprints for how human finance fundamentally shifts its operational physics,
Moving away from centuries of trading mere promises of value.
and moving toward a system that transfers actual, verifiable value instantly across the globe without requiring blind trust in a centralized counterparty.
It is genuinely thrilling to think about, and it completely reframes how you view the friction in, well, every transaction you make.
It really does. And building purely on the logic of what we've unpacked today, it leaves us with one deeply provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
Well, if these interoperability upgrades are entirely successful,
Yeah.
if the cross-chain protocols hold up under the massive stress testing of trillions of dollars in volume, and if instant verifiable value transfer truly becomes the foundational standard of global finance, then the text is right. It completely eliminates the need for institutional silos.
The fortresses become totally obsolete.
Exactly. But that raises an incredible question for you to ponder as you go about your day.
What's the question?
What happens to the massive legacy banking institutions whose entire wealth, power, and business models rely on being the exclusive, toll-collecting gatekeepers of those very silos?
Oh, wow.
Right? If the walls come down and the open ocean of decentralized liquidity floods in, do the gatekeepers adapt and learn to swim in a world where they no longer control the ledger? Or do they simply disappear?
Think about that the next time you tap your card for a cup of coffee. Are you initiating a chain of antiquated whispers between walled fortresses, or are you catching a glimpse of the instant, verifiable teleportation of the future? Keep questioning, keep learning, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.